Andrew. He got us some pretty sweet gifts. We'll show that in the thumbnail of the video or on Spotify. He also has a Instagram page called Courant and a sub-brand called Artifact.
Artifact,
Dude,
yeah.
Tell me about that before I screw it up, man.
Sure. Well, okay, so I haven't been on Instagram long. I mean, I started it at some point in college. I decided like I really need to set up an avenue where I could share my work. Being a young creative student studying in a fine arts college, so that's where Kurosaurus started from. It used to be called Mr. T-Rex, and then Rex was spelled like W-R-E-C-K-S. Okay. But then people kept on reading it as like Twerks, which is a little weird. So like, all right, fine.
You didn't like that?
Yeah, no.
Because they would catch on soon, right? Like, oh, Twerks.
Yeah. I was thinking like, do you come up with like a cool name, or do you just come up with like your regular name? You know, artists go through a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
But Artifact is basically, how I describe it is, it's an independent freelance design practice. So I think it's, as a freelancer, as a graphic designer, I understand it's very important to position yourself really as a business, as opposed to just a guy who does graphics.
Right.
So that way you're able to elevate your value as a service provider. It gives a greater sense of like legitimacy when it comes to doing business with clients, which is what you really want, is to solve bigger problems for more money.
So, for more money, man. It's just about marketing, branding yourself properly, right?
Exactly. So how am I supposed to do branding for other people if I can't do it for myself?
Right.
And that's where Artifact came from. It's really just a portfolio for my professional design work outside of illustration.
So Courant is your artist name or brand for whatever?
For whatever. Just illustration, drawing, sharing my life in whatever way I can, or whatever way people find interesting. That's what I try to put forward. And it really, I only really took it seriously like start of last year, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
And by seriously, as in, like, are you focused on specific markets and go, okay, this sells, I'm gonna do this, or like, how did you start taking it seriously?
I guess with regards to illustration, it was more like breaking away from like illustration styles or drawing styles that I was very comfortable with. So I used to practice a lot with pen and ink. I'd sketch things and use like brushes, inks, brush pens, and I was stuck with that style for a long time because I was really into like comics and old illustration. Yeah. So fun. Like I'd look at the greats like Frank Frazetta. He's this amazing American artist. He's the guy who did the art, like the paintings for Conan. Conan the Barbarian,
man.
The classic comics.
You're OG, man. Conan?
Yeah, wow. It's really good stuff, like the old Conan. So I started from there, and then I decided at some point in, I think it was like 2017, like I got to try something different, sort of break away. I feel like I needed a little bit more freshness in the work that I did. So that's when I started getting a lot into colors, solid like color shapes, and drawing from different styles, like American traditional tattoo illustration.
That's what it is.
That's where I get that's where I get some medieval art. So like you find like weird murals or frescoes of like these janky looking people with like weird symbols with like lions eating snakes, and all that weird imagery is what I try to pull from that and put that into my work.
That's
in
what
some
it is.
way.
Tattoo and medieval works.
Yeah.
Because some of your works kind of look like what they draw on a deck of cards, like the front and the back, kind of, right?
Yeah. So a huge part of my process is like relies heavily on research and discovery, and I actually put that in my rationale for Artifact for my professional work, is that when I handle brands, it is like it's a journey of discovery into this person's brand or this client's needs, and that stems from my interest in like history. Very interested in archaeology, and a lot of my friends know that, and that's why research is a huge part of this. And so if I see a symbol that pops up a lot in illustration or like
Yeah.
graphic design. Let's say, like one thing I've been seeing a lot recently is like a hand coming out of the clouds.
Okay.
Yes, it's an illustration of a cloud, and then there's usually like a hand giving something or taking something.
Mm.
So, you know, I just started looking for images and trying to figure out where that image
Where
comes
that
from,
came from,
what
why
it
is it what it
means. And, you know, it goes back a lot to like medieval art, or Renaissance art, you know, so like
okay.
hand of God,
Oh,
you know.
yeah. It's
Or
got a
even
deeper
certain,
meaning.
yeah, or even certain symbols that are pretty common, like in society today, that people joke about, like, you know, like the symbol of the Illuminati, which is like the eye of Providence.
With the pyramid, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, what is that? What does that even mean? You know, so, and then you find out it's actually something that used to have a very wholesome meaning. Through time, the meaning changes.
Yeah.
So, you know, figuring out these things is like really interesting to me.
Whoa.
And I try to put that into the work that I do.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
But you realize when people look at your work, that's just going behind them.
Right,
And like,
yeah. No, absolutely. Like, I'm sure that there are some people that just look at it and say, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Which is great. Like, you know, if you enjoy it for that, that's awesome. But there might be some people, and this is like people like me,
Yeah.
who want to figure out, like, what does this mean? It says something. You know, whether you're looking at it from a more critical standpoint,
Yeah.
trying to figure out, like, is the illustrator trying to express something or comment on something? I want to make sure that the work that I do has bearing in some way, so that, you know, when people look into it, they can interpret it however they want, you know, which is how art is.
Man,
Yeah.
with the amount of art that you create, for all of it to have meaning, that's draining, man. You know,
It is, and that's why sometimes it's fun to just draw something because you think it's cool.
Just whatever, yeah.
And that's something.
Also, you
that-
do that as well.
I do that as
That's
well.
good.
I do that a lot of the time. What you see, what I put out there, that's like the highlight reel.
Ah,
you know.
yeah.
But and this is
Makes
something
sense.
I would joke about with my brother all the time. Is that, you know, what if you just want to do art because you think it looks cool? Is that rationale enough? And for some people, yeah, you know, or if it's an exercise or practice, sure, man, just go ahead, just do it, you know.
For sure. No, because
Yeah.
there are some artists that may not be as articulate as you're able to describe your work, right? Like, one of my friends, Ia, is an amazing illustrator, had like an old artist come up to her and be like, you know, explain this to me, and almost
Yeah.
asking him to
Right.
sell it, right? Or for her to sell it to him. But sometimes, like, you can try, but maybe you're not as articulate, or it's still amazing, but
Yeah, there's really different ways to approach
yeah.
art and illustration, and that's something I'm trying to figure out now, because I have friends, or I know people who are like deeply rooted in the art community.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, like selling paintings for like millions of pesos, and
Yeah.
and like their dad's been in the industry for a long time, and they're making their mark, you know, as young as 23, 24.
Wow.
So I'm approaching, I think my approach to art is really, it comes from a different place. It really comes from design, illustration, solving problems,
Right.
communicating, like visual communication, editorial illustration. So different, it's like almost a different universe completely.
Definitely, man.
And it really, I think the two things that affect illustration and creativity and art the most, for me, would be context and purpose. So like, not even so much like the message that you want to convey, but sort of like where you're conveying it. So if you get an illustrator like one guy I always talk about, Sachin Teng. He's I'm actually not sure where he's from in Asia, but I know he's Asian. Sachin Teng, yeah.
Sachin.
He's a brilliant, amazing illustrator who pulls from a lot of different styles. But if he works on a piece for an editorial, like for a magazine, it carries a different emotion, or it carries a different, it communicates something differently than when he works on a similar piece, but it's for the, you know, cover of a comic book.
Wow.
Yeah. Versus when he does something purely as an art piece, they all look the same, but it's like in different sort of segments of this industry or this community, and I think it communicates something different, you know, whether he intended it or whether he didn't. The people who are viewing this are viewing it from different angles. One is like, oh, I'm putting this article into context, and it's like a movie review, and it's an illustration of like Chappie or something, you know, or Pacific Rim.
Yeah.
And then this one is it's a comic book cover for a fantasy graphic novel. You view that differently versus if it's in an art gallery for like contemporary art, you definitely put different meaning into that.
Right.
You know, so I think, yeah, so using that as an example, I think I'm approaching art and illustration really more from the perspective of a designer.
With a purpose.
With a purpose.
So do you think, or do you like working with clients for solving problems?
Yeah.
Like, because that's hard, man. Like, you know how they say, as an artist, dude, you hired me, man. Like, this is what I can produce for you. Like, this is my style.
Right.
But when you start solving problems and they start giving you pegs or examples, it becomes this battle between you and the client. Because I mean, they are paying at the end of the day. They need to get what they want. But do you do you fight for your style? Do you fight for your artistic creativity?
That's tough. Okay, here's how I view it, and I don't think it's a controversial view, because, you know, again, I'm a part of this industry, and I'm trying my damnedest to, like, you know, like work my way through and provide a good service. But at the end of the day, yeah, graphic designers in general, whether you're an art director or a creative director, you're a service provider. And if you're handling a client, I do understand that the client comes first. Like, their needs, their goals, their expectations are paramount. But as a designer, I think, and having gone to design school here, I think that not enough emphasis is put on the idea that graphic designers and creative directors are consultants. You know, we're like, if you're the kind of person who can run a design program and put a layout out there, then great. You know, we need those people in the industry. Whether you want to be called like a graphic artist, or, you know, what some people would jokingly say, like, oh, a render monkey, you know, because
I've never heard that one.
we've all been there, yeah. You know, we need those people in the industry. But if you want to grow, if you want to thrive, if you want to solve bigger problems, it's really about showing empathy for your client, anticipating their needs before they even know that they need that.
Wow.
And then in the most respectful and like kindest way possible, advise them towards their goal. And I think a lot of that comes from practice, experience, a lot of which I don't necessarily have yet. You know, it's something that I'm right in the middle of it at the moment.
Yeah.
You know,
no, that's good, man. You're in the trenches. That's why you're able to talk about it like that, right?
So like, I'm not really viewing this. Yeah, I always thought, like, does my word count for anything in this industry? But then, you know, the way I see it, I have my own experience, and that's really all I can comment on. You know, I'm not sharing this from the perspective of like a 20-year veteran. I'm sharing this from a guy who's, you know, I've been in the industry for about 3 years, and I've been, you know, I've been turned down. I've been told, like, oh, good job.
Yeah,
you know,
man.
so I think it's a good place to be, especially for, you know, maybe students who are studying right now.
Dude, I think you should always be there, man, in that position where you're getting rejected, you're hungry, and you're just in the trenches constantly.
Right. But yeah, sorry, to answer your question, like, I do enjoy working with clients, and it's really about being a consultant. That's where you want to be, is that you got a problem, you came to me for help, there's got to be a reason why you picked me versus, you know, thousands, you know, hundreds of thousands of other designers who do different things, you know, probably just as good or maybe even better than I do. How can I help you achieve your goal? And there will always be a client who's like, oh, I want it to look like this. Here's some references that I found. These are websites I don't like.
Yeah.
You see this logo? I want my logo to be like that. I think what elevates you from like an order taker, it's something that comes from a graphic designer that I follow, Chris Do. Amazing guy. You know, what separates you from being an order taker to being a high value consultant is really asking the right questions. So, right? Figure out, wait, why do you want your logo to look like that? Why does this website design not appeal to you? What are your goals? and like objectives for this project. Let's try to figure out what are the emotional beats behind that. What's the driving force that's causing you to like desire this shift in your brand, and figure that out. You know, and a lot of this stuff is abstract. You know, you can't really put a number on it.
How do you like when they say this makes you feel good, this doesn't, and they're like, oh, okay, let's make it red.
Yeah, no, that's where
it's
like
really abstract.
Yeah, that's where asking the questions comes from. Because like there are certain rules. Like for example, if you're working for like a bank or something, very corporate. You know, so like like right off the bat, blue. You know, some shade of blue, but there's so many banks that work with blue. So you got to find like what's the right shade of blue that communicates security, stability, and you know, modernity.
Right.
There's like a shade of blue or a color palette or something that can communicate all those things. And so that's really the challenge, is trying to get into the client's headspace, figure out what they need, what they want.
But how do you interpret that into your artwork? That's the subjective part, right? Like, I'm sure you're experiencing that like crazy right now.
Like in what sense? Like, how do you interpret that?
Like, let's say you ask those right questions and they give you a direction. Like, I kind of want this feel. I don't want to be your, let's use the bank thing as an example. Like, I don't want to be your basic bank, but I want it to be very corporate, very professional, but also family friendly.
Right.
How does that translate into like a font type, into a color, into a logo? Let's do a case study.
Okay. So research, you look at what other people have done and how they were able to accomplish those goals. And, you know, I mean, nothing in this world is original anymore. And like, you know, there's this one designer, I can't remember who it was now. I think it was Paul Rand, who he designed he designed a lot of stuff for Steve Jobs. Great designer,
cool.
yeah.
Nice.
He basically said, like, look, I don't want to be original. I just want to be good. I don't know if that's Paul Rand.
We won't quote it, man.
Yeah.
I'll find it and I'll put it on the video.
Exactly. You can just like bleep out my name and then I'll record like the right name. I think it might have been him. I think it was him. Yeah,
that's cool, man.
So you know, do research, figure out what other people have done, where they failed, where they succeeded. You know, and you'll see like a lot of case studies from the biggest agencies where, you know, they kind of screwed up somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, so you're really trying to figure out what are the good things we want to bring to this brand. And then, you know, based on your own experience and through your research, that's when you start putting in a little bit more of your work ethic, your style. You know, because I think there are different kinds of designers. There are designers who are really just like, that's their job, that's their career, and they'll wake up every day and they'll approach design by removing themselves completely from the project and doing whatever the client wants.
Right.
And a great example of
right?
that, exactly, yeah. And these guys are like the best. These are the guys who go to work in suits, but like they're the humblest, nicest people. Michael Beirut is one of them. He designed the logo system for the MIT Media Lab in the US. His team handled, a little controversial, his team handled the Slack logo, the new Slack logo.
Okay. I'm not familiar with that.
Slack, it's like a...
Slack's that chat
that one,
yeah.
So they redesigned the logo for that, and like they're getting a lot of flack for it, but it's also a good logo. Like it's not bad, you know. So those are like the suits, you know. And then you have designers like I mentioned earlier, John Contino, who's just like, he's like a rock star, like Italian American, born and raised in New York, curses like a sailor. He's into like hardcore rock.
It's just the persona, right?
But like he's straight edge, like he doesn't smoke or drink.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, and his approach to design is purely like, look, this is me. This is how I draw a logo. This is how I do an illustration. And clients get him for that.
Wow.
So if you look at his portfolio, it's like, you know, he put his mark on it. But if it's like a beer company, it still looks distinct from like a cozy hotel in the mountains and like, you know, like beef jerky packaging, you know. So it's his stamp, but they all look like they belong in their respective industries. So it's about balancing the client's needs and whether or not you're going to approach this design with your own style or just completely void of it.
Right.
And it's your decision, like whatever you want to do, you know, just make sure you do a good job, I guess. Yeah.
That's it, man. Dude, I'm so impressed by how much research and like you really do your studies, man.
It's like my hobby. Like when I clock off work, I'm still doing work because I'm on blogs, you know. I could name a few. Under Consideration, that's something a lot of the graphic designers would know. Under Consideration, Type Wolf, Fonts in Use. I'm going through like, oh man, you should see a screen cap of like my web browser because you'll just see like 50 tabs on the top.
I hate that, man. Yeah. You're a minimalist designer. What's wrong with you? What?
Man, I gotta keep those tabs open because that's where I get the information.
Right.
Like if I'm
save it.
Yeah, because I'm working on like a couple of different projects at a time.
Yeah.
And so like one project merits this sort of direction, another project needs this kind of direction. And I just like looking at these portfolios. So I have like 7 or 8 of my favorite design portfolios just like on my tabs. You know, it's all it's like organized tabs. I have like Facebook and emails, okay, Google apps like Sheets, Excel or whatever, and then I have my portfolios, and then the last is just like whatever, you know. So even though I have 50 tabs open, it's still organized.
Organized
still organized
chaos is what they call it.
Exactly. So I do a lot of research. I'm always looking at new portfolios, and I'm not just looking at the design. Like I'm reading, like why did they make that decision? What was the goal here? Did they achieve it? Oh, they threw like a small Easter egg in there or something. Or this is a part of the brand that no one's ever gonna know about unless they read this case study.
I think that does make it interesting when you see it's almost like the behind the scenes of a movie. You're able to appreciate the art more when you know what's behind it. And when you understand more, you're actually able to appreciate it more as well.
You know, seeing, you know, Chris Evans do a backflip or something for Avengers, like, oh, that's cool. It's like, oh, he did that. That's awesome. You know, so I think it's the same concept. It's like bonus material, like bonus content.
Definitely.
You know, and that's great. Because I think that's what separates, you know, someone who just does this casually, like for fun, which again is great if it makes you happy. If you do graphic design as a hobby, that's fantastic. But if you need to make a living out of this and you need to climb some kind of ladder, even though I hate like the idea of like a corporate ladder, it exists, and you got to work your way up there. You know, and for people that trust you, take you seriously, believe in your work, you need to show that. You know, you can't just, I think it's called fraud. You go around
you're doing it and you're like,
you're doing it, you're not really doing it, you know. And I'm always trying to check myself to make sure, like, you know, am I like, do I have imposter syndrome? Like, am I doing something that's not really who I am?
That's interesting.
Am I portraying myself to be someone that I really am not? Or is that mindset holding me back in some way? I could do more, but you know, maybe there's like an inferiority complex, and these are things I sort of grapple with on a day-to-day basis.
I'm sure, man. But you're still doing it. What made you wanna go for graphic or just illustration, art in general, as a career? Because it could easily just be a hobby for you, man.
Right. Yeah. When I was a kid, I knew I have an older brother, Sean Andrew, great guy. When I was young, I would always see him drawing, and I knew that, you know, like right straight from his mouth, like he wanted to be a comic artist or an illustrator, an artist, and he was really, really good at it. Like, you know, and he still is. He's very skilled, very talented. And I just grew up in a house where I would see him illustrating a lot, you know, like seeing his drawing books and everything. So that sort of implanted an interest in myself. You know, so I would draw casually from time to time. I was pretty good at it. You know, I would go to like art classes and learn how to use acrylics or watercolors and stuff. But I was never the best at this. And when I was in high school, so in grade school we had like an art class. I was able to exercise a lot and practice. In high school we had absolutely no art class whatsoever. And so that sort of, and at the same time my brother had gone to UP, College of Fine Arts. So I would see him like drawing all the time and doing art all the time and working on his projects, and I was doing nothing. And so that's when, like, okay, I gotta try a little harder and like I would draw more. I try to figure that out, and I ultimately decided to either go to like pursue film for college because I love films, great source of inspiration, great medium of storytelling, and illustration, like art. I know I didn't want to be a painter because I didn't understand that world, but I wanted to do like illustrations, basically comics or whatever. So I enrolled in UP. I actually failed the UPCAT, and it was like I was one of those guys who's like UP or bust. Like I'm either gonna go, and this is serious. Like,
so much pride in the school, man. You're like,
okay. So my mom and my brother come from UP. My dad comes from UST.
Okay.
But it was really more of like a financial thing. It's like, look, there's no other university I want to go to. And this is serious. Like for a time in my last year in high school, I was telling myself, look, I'm either gonna work in UP, study in UP, or work at a burger machine. Because that is a brand I believe in. Burger Machine is great.
It's bomb, man.
Not sponsored content, but like it's great. Yeah. So I was like, man, it's either go to school, or I'm gonna work flipping burgers. Because that's also. I mean, I'm sure you could definitely learn something from that.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when I was in UP, I got in through the talent test, and I practiced for that and everything. I would go to the college and just like draw the statues because that's like part of the exam.
Cool.
And midway through college, I had classes in graphic design. They weren't that extensive. I mean, I guess speaking for myself, my experience in college, in terms of education, wasn't the best. I had some good professors. I had some not good professors.
That's interesting.
Thank God I didn't really get the terrible ones. But like I had a couple of classes about typography, graphic design, and that's when I started learning more about that. That a logo, people want their logos to be everything, but when a logo is just one thing, I think that's when it communicates something the strongest. And when I learned that, it's like that's amazing. That's mind-blowing how you can see, like when I saw that there's like an arrow hidden in the FedEx logo in between the E and the X, there's like an arrow
incorporated in the letter.
Yeah, so it's FED, then the big E, and then the X. There's an arrow, and when I saw that and I realized that, it's like, oh my God, holy, that's
great.
Whoa.
That's why we use their brand or their company.
Yeah.
It's the arrow.
Not sponsored content, but that's part
cool,
of it.
Man. Yeah,
that's part of it. Yeah. So yeah, when I figured that out, that was amazing to me, and I wanted to know more. I started to understand that there's graphic design all around us. And I learned that like good graphic design is invisible. You won't even know it's there, and that's how good it is because it doesn't catch your attention in the wrong way. It communicates something clearly and effectively, and that's when I got hooked, and I wanted to be good at coming up with strategies and making logos and doing design, setting type, So like that's the kind of stuff I freak out over, yeah.
You're a problem solver, man. That's really cool. That's what got you into art. But to roll back with what you said earlier, I found that really interesting. Sure. You said your brother is really good. When you got into art, you weren't that great in the beginning.
Yeah.
I would argue that your stuff's actually pretty amazing. It's distinct. You've got style.
Thank you.
But yeah, how you must practice a lot.
Like transition from I mean, a lot of years. I started as young as I could, like probably like 6 or 7, drawing or doodling, and like I'm 24 now, so like there are people who have been doing this for much longer, like comic artists who have been doing this for like 30, 40 years. But there was probably a time in college where I decided, like I was seeing a lot of good art, a lot of good illustration, and I just saw that like my work wasn't cutting it, within the classroom alone, like during our figure drawing classes or like drawing techniques class where like you copy a bowl of fruits, or we would have drawing sessions with like a model.
Did you kill those?
Oh no. Like I got a couple okay, but there were a few that's like, man, this guy's arm is like way too short, and going to art school or design school is really one of the most difficult things for artists or designers because there's so much competition within the room alone. And if you're not friends with these people, which I was, friends with a lot of them, it messes with your mind, So like you're never as good. Like you're always better than someone, but you're never as good as this other guy.
It's overwhelming, right?
It's very overwhelming. And so that's when I decided, like, look, I gotta like step it up, like practice more for longer.
Yeah.
Try to pull from different things and try different styles. And I think a lot of kids nowadays, a lot of people from my batch and the batch before and the batches after, everyone's just trying to find their style. That's something that you always hear. It's like, oh, I'm trying to find my style.
Yeah.
I feel like there's like different ways to look at it. It's like, okay, I need to find my style so I could market myself better from an earlier age and then, grow faster. But there's also people who are like, no, they've never found their style. Like every decade is like a new journey of like figuring out their style, and their style will change drastically from the one before. Or they'll get into a different industry and do like completely different work. And then there are people who say that, my style is like, it's just that I don't have a style. Like Kyle Webster, he's an illustrator, I think based in the US, and he's famous for making like Photoshop brushes for illustrators.
Cool.
And that's one of his like streams of income.
Yeah.
Is he will design a brush, program it, and then make a brush set and then sell it to like 16-year-olds who like do commissions and like fan art and whatever, or even like professional illustrators. Yeah, who work for like a huge amount of money to do one illustration, and he absolutely has no style.
Yeah.
And his idea is that my style is every style I want it to be, and that just makes me a better illustrator because that qualifies me for jobs that you're not qualified for.
Very true.
Like if you only do this style,
You're
I
limited,
can do that style and more. So that just basically potentially opens up his client base and like quadruples it.
Where do you see yourself, and how would you like to be? Because I don't think there's anything wrong with either of those, right? Like the versatility or being very specific, similar to the story that rocker dude that you're talking earlier.
Yeah.
But where do you see like Kurosaurus where do you see Kurosaurus and or Artifact if you decide to venture in the same direction?
Right. Like branch out sort of, or like just as
because those
grow?
are like one's your personal brand, one's your
professional
corporate or professional brand. Do you have a direction for them in that, like, I want my style to be adaptable, but it's still gonna have like the elements of minimalism and like history, like as an example?
Okay. In terms of, I guess starting with like my personal illustrations, like Kurosaurus, that account, it really is, and I think it will be like moving forward, just a playground to do mainly illustration work. So the thing is, I've never really been paid for any of the illustration work I've done. Like no one's hired me to like illustrate for a magazine or a newspaper.
You just wait, man.
Yeah, just pretty much. And I have like a lot of friends who have had those opportunities, and extremely happy for them. But like that's the thing, is I'll do this even if there's no money involved.
Wow.
And if my style changes, so be it. I think that's a part of the journey that I want to share with other people. I want to use that as a platform to teach and to encourage them to get better at what they do, or to really like extract the best possible thing out of themselves and create like good work, and like my influence now is very, very, very small compared to like a lot of illustrators who have been doing this for much longer time, and some illustrators who have been doing it for probably shorter. They just hit the right market. But whatever my reach is, I think that's what the account is really going to be, is like, this is my work, hire me or don't, it's always going to be here. I'm always going to keep on posting stuff. And
right on.
If it encourages someone to try the style or to try something different, or even in just like the personal beats of my life that I share like on stories, that affects them in some way, positively, I hope, then I think that's already a success. As early as then. Yeah.
You're a true artist, man.
Thanks. With regards to Artifact, that's really my professional work. So I think I would love to run my own creative studio in the future.
Sweet.
you know, I've had experience working full-time, retainer, part-time, you know, total freelance, and I just really would love to run my own operation and partner up with, you know, people who do things I don't do like really well. Like, you know,
Right.
just thinking about the business side of things in the future, like, oh, I'm gonna need someone in finance, I'm gonna need someone in like operations, just to get this thing, you know, rolling well. But I think
Yeah.
the reason why I want to do that is because I feel like I have a very different way of approaching creative work. I feel like I can bring something fresh to the table. I may not know what it is right now, but it's definitely something I'm working towards, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And I feel like this different approach, this different way to do graphic design, this sort of unique, you know, like call it a creative direction or creative vision that I have from project to project, I think is something that, you know, that I value very much, and I hope that other people value it as well. And that's sort of what I want to do, is be like a full stack, full service designer.
Nice.
And hopefully maybe, you know, a full service studio, or I don't like using the word agency, it just sounds weird. Studio. Yeah, that just does like, builds great brands, great experiences, does really tight like design work. And like, you know, doing all this stuff with this like very important philosophy of like, it's all about discovering and exploring and figuring out your brand, you know, because that's where the name comes from. It's like, again, being interested in archaeology, you know, artifacts are things that, like material culture, what archaeologists would call them, that you know, they find that says so much about the people who lived in the past and what they did.
Ooh.
You know, and so, and the thing is, unless there's a, you know, if you're an archaeologist, unless you find a written document to say like, this is what this rock was for, or this gold ring was for, then we'll never absolutely know what it was. And that's why the research is important. That's why, you know, like assigning sort of value and assigning meaning to these objects through research is important. And that's exactly what I do, just in a different context.
Wow.
You know, it's like I try to build artifacts that represent this client's culture.
Artifact. Oh,
Yeah.
It's so, there's so much meaning, man. Yeah, I love
so,
it.
you know, and you know, I thought about that for a while, and I just wanted to go back to the root of everything, which is, you know, explore, discover, find out something new, do something different. You know, and one of the taglines I run with is like, you know, dig deep, you know, like try to figure out what it is that makes this client tick, or what makes this project work.
Right.
You know, and try to bring that out in the best way possible.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love it, man.
So those are like the two like avenues that I'm trying to pursue at the moment. And I'm right in the thick of it. Dude.
It's awesome. It's awesome. I got one more question for you, man. Really curious about your take on creativity. I know you mentioned earlier you do a lot of your own research, but can you be a little bit more specific in how exactly you do it? Like, what kind of active things do you do when you do your research? Because the bane of my question is, how do you stay creative?
How do I stay creative?
Yeah.
Gosh, it's really difficult. I mean, I think for some people it's innate. Like, they don't know what makes them tick. You know,
It's just automatic,
it's just
accident,
like,
right?
Yeah, it's just like they're just creative. You know.
Yeah.
And I have a couple of friends who are like that, and I
hate
don't
those
understand.
people, man.
Yeah, they're so good. They're just way too good. Personally, I guess I could break this down to a couple of ways. One, I think, is really like influence, like the influence that media or that other creative people have on me is like fuel. That's like gas, like that keeps the engine.
So when you see all
running.
these amazing people, you're like, I gotta keep going. It's awesome.
And you know, at some point, oh sorry, I just like but like at some point, a lot of this stemmed from like jealousy. You know, and sometimes it still does. You know, sometimes you'll see something and be like, God damn it, I wish I had done that.
Hey, at least it's pushing you for the positive,
exactly.
right?
But like, so like before, a lot of it stemmed from jealousy. And like, why can't I do that? I want to do that. You know, and then at some point, you know, your perspectives change and it becomes a little bit more positive. It's like, no, I'm pursuing my own thing, and there's a bigger thing at play here, and that's you know to do good work, and bring value to people, and so with that comes this responsibility to keep your knife, your figurative knife sharp. Whether that's through research or sometimes like watching movies, you can get a lot of great insights about creativity from movies, like shot choice or like a color palette in a film. Reading books, like figuring out like where writers were coming from when they were writing a certain thing.
Cool.
Video games is a great place because it's so visual.
This is all from experience, yeah? Like as in you read a book and boom, something came out. Like cool.
So a lot of it is influence, and definitely seeing a lot of great design or illustration work. That's really what gets the gears going. That sometimes I'll see a project and I want to do something like that. Like I want to figure out, hey, they were able to figure this thing out or brand this one product in the weirdest way. Let's give that a shot. And then I'll create like a fake, brand or product and then do a whole campaign on it just to practice and figure out, like, get into that headspace.
Burger machine, man.
Yeah. I have thought about that.
Do it.
The thing is, I think their design now suits the market really well.
Okay.
It suits their audience really well. So if you change it, it's gonna be different. So sadly, you can't.
You don't want to, huh?
I don't want to.
Okay, what about elevating the brand, man?
You gotta elevate the brand in line with the
with
audience.
Your current market.
Yeah, with the current market. So it probably won't be in a way that looks better necessarily from a design standpoint, but I think there's probably like a marketing campaign you could do.
So in your perspective, it's good just the way it is.
Oh man, it's perfect.
Yo, shout outs to whoever did Burger Machines design. It's working as per Liam. So.
Yeah, so like, it's good. Influence, and then I think the other one would be process. Influence and process drive creativity for me personally. I feel like if you're the kind of process in whatever sense, if you don't have a process, that's also a process. Like, if you're just an artist who throws paint on a canvas and then sloshes it around and then like you break an egg on it and then you do a chant, that in itself I think is a process of some sort.
Probably won't do anything, but
hey,
I guess it might.
It floats your boat, I guess. Probably won't do anything for other people, but like maybe the artwork, sure. But yeah, I think having a solid process is something that's very important to me. There's got to be a way to do things and a sequence of events or thoughts that gets you from an abstract idea, and I'm speaking like for illustration and design, like an abstract idea, condensing it into something with more meaning, with more of a background, and then you have your product, like your final image. And again, I could make an artwork or I could make a logo, and people who see it might not ever get the full story behind it, but it's there. That's like the goal, is like, if you want to find out, it's just there. You just have to ask me or read the case study, and that's ultimately the goal. I can't really say I'm doing that now with everything that I do, but in the end, it's like try to make a solid piece of work as I can.
Definitely, man. And I can vouch. You're easily on your way, dude. So
thank you so
guys,
much.
Check out Courant and Artifact. Talk to Liam Andrew. Find out why he designs what he designs, because he has something cool to talk about. So,
thank you so
dude,
much.
Thank you for being part of the show, man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.